to come to the acknowledgement of our formless beingness, knowingness here and now. We do so by observing the form. So by observing form, we come to automatic recognition that that which is observing never appears as a form. Matter of fact, all forms, there's an awareness of, there's a seeing of, yet that which is aware, what I call myself, what I refer to as I, me, myself, never itself, at any moment, appears as a form, physical or subtle. So that which is aware right now of these words, of the sound of my voice, of the thoughts in the mind right now, interpreting this or hoping to get something out of today's call. Even the idea that we usually have of ourselves when we say me, right? An image of our face or the story of our past. All of this is form, observed from the standpoint of the formless right now. So in that guidance, we sort of, we explored that being that which does not appear as a form, yet is the source of all form, is not on some other side of form, but rather here and now as the essence and source of it, not apart from it in any way. So today I wanted to just expand on that with a little visual. And I actually want to go back to a diagram that I used to use before. And so we'll see where we get with that today. And then if you have any questions, you can also let me know, okay? So let's start here. Let me draw it out. So those of you who have been part of the program for a while probably know this diagram. I'm not drawing it off fully yet. I'm going to do it piece by piece. But this is also covered in the, you'll see this diagram and this sort of approach and also the self-abidance section inside of our course. But first we have to, so first we'll only cover the physical. And it is small because I do want to cover the whole page later, so bear with me. So we'll call this the first wave, or we can say the realm, we can say the physical realm, physical objects, things you know, which are physical. So just sort of take inventory of that. Look around you and just acknowledge all things that I consider physical. So of course, like the room that you're sitting in, the world that you perceive, right? It has a sort of a sense of solidity, sense of physicality, sense of realness. But even your own body, physicality to it, right? It would fall in under the realm of the physical. So if we were to go a little subtler into things that you know, into things that you are aware of, that you see change, that you see constantly shuffle around. So of course, in the physical, like nobody has to tell us, oh, the world changes or our circumstances and situations change. That's very obvious to us. But usually we feel that the world is changing to me, the body, which is sitting here. But in this sort of contemplation, we put the body also, we acknowledge that the body is also in the changeful appearances, just like the circumstances of the world is very clearly changing, constantly shuffling around. The body itself is being seen by me to change. Even though the body keeps changing, I still feel like myself. I am me. I am never not me. There's a sense of continuity. Like which body is more me? Which version of this body is more me? You can't really say. Right now, of course, this version of the body feels more you, but at one point, this wasn't it. So we put the body in the same um, bucket as the physical world because it has a sense of physicality. It's not that the world is changing in front of the body, which is not changing. Actually, the body is itself part of the changing world, being seen to change. It's part of the physical realm. So from there, let's take it a step subtler. And of course, these aren't things to just be thinking about right now. Just, see and let it be. No need to get anywhere, no need to understand, no need to nothing. Just allowing the mind to encounter this sort of pointing. So let's go a little subtler of into things you are aware of, you see change. And of course, what do you think that is? So the next layer we'll go to is the mental or the subtle layer. I'm sorry if this is a little small. Don't worry. I'll post this in the group later also. So if we go physicality, the physical realm, objects you clearly see, clearly, it senses solidity to. Now we're going a subtler step. Things that you don't actually see or sense, let's say, that aren't in the realm of your five senses. You can't really see, hear, taste, touch, or smell. Yet you are aware of, you know, you see, I, me, myself, see, even though I can't sense through the mechanism of the body, the senses, I still am aware of these things. These are our thoughts, feelings, right? Emotions, sensations. Even the sense of our own personality. We see change. During these years, I was shy and reserved, but during these years, I was very outgoing and extroverted. During these years, I was very sad, but during these years, I was very happy. So these subtler things that aren't in the realm of the five senses, that the five senses can't pick up on these things. It's not in the realm of the physical, yet still you are aware of them. So the body is no longer aware of them. The mechanism of the body is no longer, picking up on those. Yet you are still aware. It is still in your seeing, even though it's invisible, subtler than smoke, because even smoke is a physical form. Is it difficult to be aware of these subtle things? No, it's not. These thoughts that are constantly arising are being effortlessly, spontaneously known, seen. Even if we're like that type of person, we're like, oh, this is all difficult. I don't really get this. Even in that moment, if we actually look into our direct experience, thoughts are being seen, known by who? Me. I am aware of it. So this doesn't require any practice. This doesn't require any spiritual understanding. It's just acknowledging the what is already. So of course, physicality and things we consider so rigid and solid and real are being seen to are something that I am aware of, or something that I see change while I do not change. And then we take it a step subtler. Things that are invisible, they are not picked up by the five senses. They are not in the realm of the five senses. They are not in the realm of the physical. Yet I see them. I am aware of them. I see them change, come and go, appear and disappear. The thoughts, which are subtle, invisible, they're constantly talking about the world. They're talking about the person at the center. They're talking about the person's world, the person's story, the world, what's happening in this and that. So they're talking about what is happening in the physical. You see? So the subtle and the talking, the thinking, it's all about what's happening in the physical, what happened, what will happen. They're describing physical objects. So the subtle knows the physical. But even the subtle talking, you are aware of. Right now, there's a sense of intelligence, a sense of knowing, a sense of awareness, sense of identity, which sees, which knows, even the subtle talking about the physicality. So this sense of identity, the sense of knowledge, knowing, awareness, which sees, which is aware of even the subtle, invisible talking, that must be even subtler than the invisible talking. I hope that's getting through. No? So the subtle talking, the thinking, right, about what's in the physical, what's in a realm that is not as subtle. It's more, let's say it has a sense of denseness, sense of solidity to it. That subtle knows the physical, but something you know even the subtle. So that brings us to the next. So you see, this is the third layer, which we can, the only thing we can really call it is awareness. But but it's different because at the physical, right, there's a multitude of objects, things that you can say one is this and one is that. One is not this because it doesn't have this type of quality and this type of, like, it's the realm of characteristics, boundaries, divisions, definitions, clear, very clear definitions. Like, for example, this is a glass. but this is not a glass. Very clear definitions and boundaries and descriptions and characteristics and functions. But you go to the subtle realm, thoughts, emotions, feelings, and there's a harder. It's harder to describe where the boundary is between one and the other. It's difficult to characterize and compartmentalize and define and see the separation in, but still there is a degree of, right, this is there, this is that, this begins here, this begins there, or this ends there. This has this characteristic, like this, for example, anger versus fear versus sadness versus happiness. So still, they're very clear distinctions. They're very, a lot of these, right, separate compartments where you can say this is this, but this is not this. But now, even subtler, that which perceives even the subtle compartments. In your direct experience, try to find something there where you can say, this is where this ends and this is where that begins. You can't think about this. You have to just actually see. It's very difficult, right? Like you can't, with what we call awareness, knowingness, beingness, there's no set boundary, definition, characteristic, quality, which we usually measure objects with. For example, this is a glass and not a pen. At the subtlest level of that which I sense as identity, as a sense as myself, as a sense as knowing, I cannot find anything describable. Yet it is me. That's the part I want to sort of really try to get across today. That which I am right now, that which I am right now, which perceives the subtle forms and the physical forms. Right now, am formless, is not a form, is not a thing, is not associated with the objects. It is that pure intelligence, beingness, knowingness, which knows forms, which makes forms possible. So I'll try to bring it home with another little diagram. So if you look here, and sorry for my handwriting. So all that you know as physical, the entire physical world, including your body, can be in this circle right here. By the way, are you seeing it backwards or is the writing like you're able to read it? Okay. I know the handwriting is not the best, but um, everything that you see as physical objects that you know, that you are aware of changing, appearing, are in this circle. And then we go a little subtler, right? The mental thoughts, emotions, sensations, feelings, perceptions. This is mind. And then we go a little subtler, In what does mind and what physicality appears to be? In what is that seen? In what is that known? We can say that's the third. And I know I drew a line here, a circle, but there doesn't seem to be one because this is not in something. This just is the ground in which these two are. Don't worry, don't think about that too much. Don't give that to your mind. Don't start interpreting this right now. The physicality, all that is physical, the subtlety, all that is subtle, is being seen by you to change, to appear and disappear, to come and go, while you do not change, while you remain yourself. You, right now, are none of these appearances, are none of these forms, are none of these things, objects, perceptions. You are aware of form being the formless. You know form being the formless self that you are. You are not one of these things that has awareness of form. You are the formless ground of being in which these forms are known. So right now, even the mind saying, oh, maybe, but like this is kind of subtle and I don't really understand this, or I got to really meditate on this, is simply a form that you are plainly aware of. That sense of intelligence, that sense of knowing, knowledge, being, that is at the core of your experience right now. Not at the center, just at the core, like at the essence of it. That I feel closer than close. Even it's closer than even the thought appearing and saying something. I am that right now, regardless of how much spiritual practice I have or have not done, regardless of how good I am at meditation. So we contemplate formlessness by acknowledging that I am that which is aware of all form, yet I never appear as a form. I see this whole dance of form constantly happening and appearing and disappearing and changing, yet I never appear to be inside of that. The confusion is that we attribute this formless knowing to objects. We identify with objects, and that's the personal state. That's the state of being a person. Nothing wrong with that, but this is the sort of the delusion that we're sort of clearing up at the core. We only know ourselves in the densest way possible of being a person in a world. Now we are just coming to unravel the layers and see what I am at essence prior to form, prior to even the subtle sense of personality that I feel like I am, that I, this past and this whatnot. We're not denying form. We're not denying physicality. We're not denying the personality at all. If anything, clearer understanding of this will actually bring freedom of expression to the form. So don't let your mind go there. Don't resist the very, the pointing. When the mind does resist or all is throwing up all of these things, oh, I'm confused, I'm scared, I don't know about this. That's all conceptual. Us being afraid or us being confused, is conceptual. It's in the realm, it's in the story that the thoughts are painting out. But those thoughts, they're being seen. The story is projection, concepts, but the seeing of the thoughts are fact, is fact, undoubtable. So the practice of self-inquiry is returning to the fact, the only fact, which is I am, I know. And just this returning to fact, returning to the bare essence, returning to that where you cannot say this is this and this is that, right? We can say returning your attention to that, where there is no distinction, definition, characteristic, boundary, starts to undo this. We can say it starts to clean up the mess, which is what we experience as, oh, a sense of peacefulness in my meditation, or a sense of clarity, understanding, insight, wisdom. But see how our attention dwells only in form. We say, I want to, discover what I am prior to this, prior to the mind, prior to the body. I want clearer understanding. I don't want to be identified. But see, like our attention is constantly just immersed in objects, in distinctions, divisions. The sense of being, the sense of identity is constantly just unconsciously being imparted to form. Therefore, like that momentum remains alive. That momentum of the illusion or the dirt continues to be strong. That's all we're undoing. Just bringing the attention home to its source of no division. In the moment you acknowledge, I am aware, in the moment you are aware of being aware, you are abiding as the formless. You are being that which you are. You are no longer imparting that beingness to form. And therefore, form loses its capacity to steal that beingness, we can say. It never actually steals it, but it's the appearance of having been taken away. So that's when we talk about devotion to the practice or the teaching, that's what we are talking about. Not imparting your sense of identity and beingness to form by no longer remaining immersed in form. Even right now in this conversation, while the talking and listening is happening, regardless of if we get this or not, is there not awareness here and now? Are you not aware here and now? Is that not your experience? That's all we're talking about. That sense of identity. I am here, I'm aware. It is colorless. It is not bouncing out in front of you as a object that you can say, oh, there it is. But even though it's colorless, it is so vivid here and now. It colors all your experience. To no longer impart that to form is what we're talking about. How? Just bringing the attention home. And that's what we cover in the self-inquiry lectures. How? The practice of that. The question, who am I, is pointing us, we can say it's pointing our attention away from being immersed in form to just being. It's just dissolving into being, the formless. That is silence. That is why you'll often hear teachers like Ramana Maharshi describing silence as their highest teaching. Because any amount of talking, right, it can only go so far. It can actually only seek to point you to the formless, but that which is formless can't be talked about because again, I remember when I said that like the talking, the thinking can only happen about what is in the physical realm, objects. I can talk a year straight about the pen and I can describe it in all different ways, but the moment I start talking about the formless, all I can really say is formless. And I can really only like refer to it in negative terms. Unknown, formless. So the mind falls silent there. It has no function because it can only offer descriptions about it, but the descriptions themselves are being seen. They're being known. The description is a story about something. It's not the actual thing. I can say the glass is clear, but that doesn't really uh it's not the experience of this, you know? It's just a story about this. It's just a description about this. I can talk about how anger feels, but it's not going to give you like that to to feel anger, you must feel anger, experience anger. And so we can say the mind also can talk about the subtle, but not in such a great way as the physical. But then when it really now we're talking about that which is even subtler than the mental realm, it falls silent. It has nothing to add because it can only talk about that where there is division. So this is what I would like to the main thing that I wanted to start with today. And I know I rambled on a little longer than expected, but I just want to like here and now, that which I am, that which is aware, me, myself, which sees the world changing, including the body. That which I am, which sees the thoughts changing and appearing and disappearing, these personalities coming and going. That which I am right now is that which is not a form. So if you have any questions about this, I would love to answer them. Um, and if this was also helpful, please give me some feedback. Let me know. Otherwise, we can also get to the other questions for today. Thank you, Bindu. Very good. That's what is so powerful about the self-inquiry practice, and that is ultimately meditation in essence. In that moment, you are no longer imparting beingness to form. In that moment, you are being as you are, as the formless self, free from any association with form. And that is the undoer of the confusion, the delusion, the illusion. Thank you, Bez. Happy it was clear. Bindu said, hope you can talk more about it, especially how we can take the formless to be this form. You don't need to know that. You don't like, because contemplating that is silly. Like, why we take this to be the formless? Just like the moment we hear this is like the only thing to do is like be the formless self knowingly, you know? Um, because right, the mind is just I wants another story about okay how this is coming to be. Why is the formless being taken to be? Um, First, let's solve the let's clean up the dirt. And Bet, I did get your question, so I'm going to get to that after this conversation. Okay. I just want to see if we can clear up some stuff regarding to this conversation. Doris said very helpful, but I noticed that in practicing that I feel so sad and scared. These are things in the subtle realm being seen. You see that that's the thing. Like with this practice, that's what it has to be that direct. It has to be like that sort of. We have to just return to the fact because even the sadness, the fearfulness, it will come and go. It's a color being seen from the colorless. So whatever arises, it's okay. But the fact is, it is being seen, it is being known by you, that which is not being seen to come and go. The sadness appears and disappears. You do not. The fear is also an object inside of the subtle, inside of the mental, the subtle layer, being seen from that which is not in that layer of the perceivables. It perceives yet is not itself perceived. So to say I'm scared, I'm sad is actually incorrect. I perceive sadness to come and go. I know fear arising and subsiding. I am as I am, colorless, boundless. Just identity, beingness, knowingness, the intelligence whose light, in whose light anger is being seen. So that's the sort of approach to this practice. That's why it's returning to the very fact again and again and again. Mind takes us on all these journeys and stories and just this addiction to describing, interpreting. The only solution to that is just returning to the fact of knowing being. And you will see in that the sadness will not stop gripping you. The fear will stop gripping you. The stories will stop gripping you because right now they're able to grip us because this sense of beingness is being imparted to them, to the story making, to the talking about experience, to the sadness, to the fear, to the mental states, to the physical states. The only undoer of this is just returning to beingness, being as you are, to the fact of knowing, to the fact of being aware, being as you are. And then the very things that we feel like are obstacles to this start dissolving. We feel like, oh, once I take care of these obstacles, then I can go deeper into this. But actually, the very practice of it, returning to the fact of it, despite whatever your mind says about it, is the only solution to the mental obstacle disappearing. There is no obstacle to this. All obstacles are perceived. They are in the realm of the subtle. The only solution is just returning to the fact of being aware of this, of the obstacle, and the obstacle will vanish. And Doris, I mean by obstacle that this sadness or this fear, you know, anything that we feel like, oh, I I I get this practice, but I'm trying to practice, but or I'm not able to practice because, that we can just say obstacle. The only dissolving element of that is returning to the fact of knowing of it rather than being in the story of it. And Bet, you said, I honestly don't know if I can completely disidentify from the body. Don't worry about if you what you know or don't know, what you think or don't think. This is just simply an assumption, an idea. It is in the realm of the subtle. The fact is, I know, I am aware. Regardless of dwelling in ideas, just return to the fact of it. So whatever the mind says about it, just return to the fact of knowing of the mind. Deborah said, what is the utility in this? To know yourself as you are is the end of taking yourself to be what you are not. And therefore, the dissolving of the suffering that ensues on behalf of the thing you take yourself to be, on behalf of the false identification. So you can see the utility. It's not going to have a type of utility that we typically want from things. For example, I want the glass to hold water. I want my confidence to help me achieve. All things just for the some sort of sake, some sort of mental or physical satisfaction. Here, the only pursuit and reward is self-knowledge, not being not being pursued for some mental or physical pleasure or satisfaction or solution, yet bringing it. It's almost like if you build a house on a really bad foundation, everything that you build on top of a really bad foundation is going to be faulty. So there's going to be dysfunction. But once the foundation is strong, once the core is um, this is where the example sort of fails a little because I don't want to use some sort of language which triggers some other mental doubt or fear about this. We just say when the foundation is strong, everything you build on top of the foundation is functional, harmonious. Robert said there's a sense of freedom in the simplicity of this, regardless of what the mind says about it. Absolutely. And that's the point of this. So even earlier, right? Like let's say when Beth said, I don't know if I can completely disidentify from the body, or there's fear of this, regardless of what is going on in the mental, because something always is going on. The mind either gets this or doesn't get this. The mind has some description about it. It's either good or bad. It reacts to it positively or negatively, regardless of what the mental state is, regardless of what description or story the mind is launching about this. That is all conceptual. It's like the story being played on the screen. and we're caught up in the story, encapsulated, completely immersed. But the fact is, to return to the 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 fact that it's just the images appearing on the screen. So to return to the fact of knowing of the story, rather than knowing the story, return to the fact of being aware of that it's a story. So rather than being the fear, you acknowledge I am aware of the fear coming and going, rather than just taking yourself to be this thing which says, oh, I don't know if I can ever do this. You acknowledge the fact of seeing this thought appearing and disappearing. Again, you're not imparting a sense of being to what you see, what you know, regardless of what the mind says, regardless of how it reacts, regardless of what you feel. All that is stuff you are aware of, and it comes and goes. How you feel about it right now may not be how you feel about it later. Who cares how you feel about it? The fact is, you are aware of it. You are aware of how you feel about it, and the feeling will change. But you being aware of how you're feeling will not change. That is the fact we are returning to again and again, and that is the solution. The solution. And that's the simple part of it. The simple part of it that you just said, Robert, it's like returning to the fact of whatever you're aware of. That fact is changeless. It's not changing. Like everything you are aware of is changing. In that regard, it's simple. But the mind is like, oh no, how could this be simple? This is so complicated. There's so much at risk. I'm feeling this. I'm feeling that. I'm feeling. That's where we get sort of overwhelmed. But even the overwhelmed is perceived, is something we are aware of from the fact of being. Quite exciting, actually. Rose said, I guess the practice is to keep being into the awareness state, regardless of how much you get pulled by subtle things, regardless of how much mind wants to be involved. Yes. So all the pointers of self-inquiry is just returning to being aware of being aware. In the simplest way, that is the only pointer, really. That is meditation. In that moment, in that self-knowledge, in that self-acknowledgement, beingness is not being imparted to form. And so it's cool to see yourself being immersed in the story again and again, and just severing that momentum by returning to self-awareness, which is silent, descriptionless, storyless. And see that's the sort of strength of the hypnosis. In one of the books that I read a while back ago now, I think the book was called Who Cares? And in that book, the author described this, that what you just described, Rose, like regardless of how much mind wants to be involved, or like how much this beingness is being imparted to form, to objects, subtle and physical. The author called that divine hypnosis. It's like so the potion you're drinking to be free from this hypnosis is self-awareness. Richard said, awareness is subtle, qualities of its own. Focus on one object, realize the focus has moved somewhere else. Or like if at that level we have to create a sense of like distinction, then we can say, yeah, the attention is also being seen by you. The focusing and the scatteredness of attention is also being seen by you. just for the diagram purposes, we can say to keep it as simple as physical, subtle, and then knowingness. Yeah. But in the last guidance, we took an additional step and spoke about how that which announces itself, which that whose announcement you experience as presence is uh is unknowable. Even this presence, although it is not known as an object, it is that in which all is known. It is a very sort of self-evident sense of identity, being, awareness. But that, we could say, like, whose presence, that is the principle which is, we can say, beyond. And so again, I would recommend also going through that meditation for anybody interested. Deborah said, also, this self that is us, our real nature, is also the true reality of the universe. There's only one self. When we say formless, there's nothing to separate it from one to the other. There's nothing to separate it from here and there, now and then, this and that. These are all distinctions only relevant in the physical realm and the subtle realm. That which knows, that formless self which knows, apart from which what it knows has no reality, in which form appears and disappears, is what we're referring to as the essence, as the substance and the essence. So when we speak, and the way that we sort of did the guidance the other day, it was to not seek the formless as somewhere on the other side of form, or somewhere beyond this. Formlessness is shining here as form. The sense of reality we feel to form is formlessness. That whose reflection is this presence, we can say, is the source of presence. That which reflects as presence um, through the mechanisms of different body minds, all is that one source of presence, is the reality we sense as me, myself. There was a teaching that resonated with me a while ago that said something on the lines of see how everybody refers to themselves. We refer to ourselves, like, everybody calls us different names, but everybody refers to ourselves as I, regardless of what language. The name that we have for ourselves is I, me. So the pointer was, see if there's 7 billion eyes, me's, or one eye to which all the 7 billion me's really refer to. Richard said, awareness practice reveals even more subtle layers of seeing. Yes, that is so in regards to, when we were talking about, oh, what is the utility of this earlier as well. One thing that it becomes very clear is like, as you begin to return to the fact of being, the fact of knowing, many things that previously we used to be caught up in, almost like, like if we're wearing goggles right now and we wear goggles for like, let's say 10 days straight, and let's say it's red goggles, we'll forget that we're wearing goggles, like, or even like, let's say you have a long day outside and you're wearing sunglasses. After a while, maybe you even forget that you have sunglasses, or let's say some of you wear eyeglasses. You'll forget that you're wearing eyeglasses. It's just there. It just feels like, um, what's there, what you forget completely that you have a filter on. And so this practice helps us become aware, oh, I'm looking through a filter, and then helps us being able to just put the filter down. So just like when we're out and about in the day and we have forgotten we have glasses on, we don't have the capacity to take them off. The first step to taking them off is like becoming aware that they're there. And so as we practice meditation and inquiry, and of course acceptance as well, all really boils down to one practice. That's for another conversation. We start becoming more and more aware of the subtle, because when the attention is so immersed in form, especially in a very deeply identified state, it's like what we usually refer to as like the mind being very muddy. It's very dense and gross, and it only is so immersed in just objects. The practice of self-observation, the spiritual practice, sort of lightens up the mind, makes it more and more subtle. We become aware of many of the subtle layers of mind operating.
Thanks so much for watching this video. I really hope that it helped you and brought you great clarity. I'm running a free class right now that will help you go so much deeper into the practice of this teaching, and it will help you get all of your answers from meditation, from inner wisdom and insight. If you'd like to watch that, I highly recommend it. It's up there right now, free for a limited time. You can watch it. I'll link it in the description box below. It's called Awaken to Your Formless Self. So go ahead and watch that if it interests you. Along with that, if this entire practice is something that you need my consistent help with, if you want to be surrounded by a very intimate and powerful group, a community where you can feel supported and stay consistent with your practice and bring depth to your understanding and perception, ultimately dissolving mind identification and awakening to your formless self, then learn more about my School of Awakening. It will absolutely transform your spiritual practice and understanding. I'm very excited to share it with you. I'll link it down below as well. If it is something that piques your interest, read up on it, look at the entire page after you click on the link, and then you could apply at the bottom of that particular web page. But that's all for me for today. I'll see you next time.